All right, welcome to today's live design streaming session. I'm your host, Farma Henry, and this is a show brought to you by Do Better UX, the number one place for you to learn UX design and design thinking, product design skills that can help you take your career to the next level. So if you're interested in that type of content, please do check out our podcast. I wonder if I'm actually live. Did I hit go live? All right, I think I did. All right, cool, we're live. All right, so if you're interested in this type of content, please do check out our podcast, our blog and design community. The links are in the description below. Just head out to our website, dobetterux.com, and you will be able to find out, all of the other different content that we are working on. I'm super excited about this one because it's a topic that I've been wanting to speak about a lot, and it's also a question that gets asked quite a bit, but maybe let me change this depressing background music here that I have. I wanted to play something else, but I don't know how I ended up here, into playing this guy here. I want to play some Harris Heller stuff. Harris Heller, let me just so if you are into streaming, or you do Twitch or whatever it is, I'm sure you probably know about Harris Heller, right? This dude has a cool sweet playlist of royalty-free streaming music. All right, cool. So I hope that can give us a better mood for the rest of the live streaming session. A quick intro into today's show. We want to be talking about what is design thinking, right? Design thinking it's a term that is thrown around in the UX space quite a bit, a lot of people who are getting into UX design want to know what is the actual definition of what design thinking is, where can you use it, and how does it work out. And that is what we're going to try and unpack today. We're going to, sort of like speak about a little bit of background around what design thinking is. We're going to talk about the steps involved in design thinking, and in closing, we're going to talk about some of the things that you need to consider and think about when you are getting into this design thinking space, and how you can apply the methodology and the philosophy into your own work that you're currently doing at the moment. I'm just going to check out how the stream health is doing here, so that I'm not just firing away blank rounds. I think we're doing good. So if you're here, please do let us know, what do you think design thinking is, or how are you using design thinking within your UX career currently? If you're watching this after the fact and you're watching the replay, let us know in the comments section below, what are you currently using design thinking in your UX career right now. And if you are new to UX design, let me know what you think UX design thinking is. So cool, let's jump right into it. So first of all, design thinking, it's a philosophy, or rather I would call it a methodology, to help people solve problems creatively. Now, it is not a step-by-step defined process, but it is more of a holistic approach on how you can solve problems creatively. There are many ways that you can solve problems creatively, especially within the agile environment and within the UX design space as well. But the difference between design thinking and most of the other things that are out there that we might talk in other topics in the future, is that it's human-centered design, and that is where it really differentiates all of the things that you might find in design thinking. It really focuses on the user at hand, and not necessarily on what the product is. Okay, obviously you will have to solve what the product is and all of that good stuff, coming up with an actual proposition of how to solve things. But it actually starts with the user and empathizing on the user, and trying to figure out what is the user problem, what is the user situation, and really focus and zoom in on the user, right? So that is the special thing about design thinking. And I think using design thinking as a methodology or as an approach that you use in your offering or your UX design practice. Maybe you run some sort of UX design agency, or you're thinking into expanding your toolkit as a UX designer. Maybe that's why you're watching this specific show here, and you want to learn a little bit more about design thinking. It's definitely a thing that will help you really approach the problems that your users are having in the lens of the actual user themselves. How are they experiencing the product? What is the current situation and problem that you're actually trying to solve with this specific product? So that is a little bit about design thinking. Obviously there's tons and tons of resources on the internet that you can check out if you just look up design thinking, like you have landed here on this live design streaming session. But I don't want to waste a little bit more time in just talking about the history and the background. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of the actual process itself, and how do you go about doing design thinking, and using it as an actual methodology that you can solve people's problems with creatively. So here we go. We're getting into the steps now, and the first step that we have is empathize. Actually, I have a cool image that I have here. Let me just move over my notes so that I can show you guys this image. So let's move over my notes there and go into present mode. Cool. So big ups to Vismir, who helped make this thing. I just downloaded it off the internet, but I thought it was a cool little GIF thing that I can use here. So the first step that we have is the empathize, and in this step we are really looking at gathering information, doing user interviews, really digging in deep into our users' context and situation. We want to try and get into the user space as much as possible. We want to try and really understand what is the user doing, what is the problem, and if we put this product in front of them, how are they going to use it in their specific context and situation that they're currently in, right? Most of the time we forget that users might not have some of the resources that we have, like super fast smartphones and other things like that, to access these digital products that we're trying to make. So you want to zoom in into the user's world and really start gathering that information. And this can be done through user interviews, through surveys, through other research methods that you can use to actually you zoom in into your users environment and space, and to actually we call this empathize because we want to be in the user space and actually understand what are their problems, and not like what are we trying to solve with our product, but what are the users' problems and how can we solve them with a certain approach, and if our hypothesis of how our product actually works can solve their problems at the end of the day. I'm just getting a notification to go and walk my dog. How do I hide these things? I wish I could hide them for my live streaming sessions. And I wish I could make this thing full screen as well. All right, never mind. I don't have to make it full screen. Anyway, so that is the first part about our design thinking process. The next part is define. So what you're defining here is really what you have unpacked within your empathize phase. You're trying to define what is the actual problem that the user is having, what are your users needs, and what is the situation that you actually found them, and who are these users actually. More of the time, what usually happens in the empathize phase is that we go in with sort of like a solution first approach, and we then go in and zoom in on the users, and then we actually realize that these are not the people that we are trying to solve problems for. So defining you here might actually tweak and change who your personas are, and your initial target market that you thought you're going in with, right? So you want to be able to define what are your users' needs, what are the problems that they're actually having, after doing that empathize phase, when you really understand, your users' environment and what their problem is. Getting into that, that is where you want to start hypothesizing specific things, before you get into the ideation stage, and you basically want to go into the ideation space with some hypotheses that you might want to test out and see if those things might solve your users' needs. So in this defined space, you are defining what the problems are, coming up with these insights of your user needs and hypotheses of how could you possibly solve this thing. A lot of people leave that step out for the ideation space, but I found out that it's quite a cool thing to get out of the define phase. Over my years of trying to apply design thinking, it's something that you might want to document just after you are putting all the insights and the user needs into one space, and you're like, okay, so this is how we're going to hypothesize, and this is the idea that we have currently, and let's see if this is going to solve our users' problems or not, right? Cool. So the next step, we're gonna get into I just closed my notes here. Let me just open the whole thing as a page. All right, much better. So the next thing that we want to get into is the ideation space. Now this is where the fun really begins for some people, because this is where you're actually starting to get into actual problem solving. A lot of people jump and fast forward most of their processes into this ideation phase, and actually leave out the other first two steps, which is a huge mistake for a lot of people who are trying to design products, because you're almost starting with the product first and not understanding what your user situation is. And that is where design thinking is different from other ideation and some other methodologies that people might use for creative problem solving, right? So the first two steps are really crucial, and they're some of the biggest differentiators of this process, unlike any other brainstorming and creative problem solving process that some people might be having out there, right? So here we go. In the ideation space, you're actually going to start coming up with solutions. This might come in the form of brainstorming workshops. You might use something like the LDJ. If you don't know what that is, it's the Lightning Decision Jam, which is a short 1 hour, 1.5 hour workshop. If you want to know more about it, check out our podcast, Do Better UX. I'm sure we do have some episodes there talking about the LDJ, and you can also scout our YouTube channel as well, or you could just look it up on the internet. If you search Lightning Decision Jam, you should be able to find some resources and other things around it as well. It is a cool cool little workshop that was, designed by AJ and Smart, some of, the really cool people who are working within the design sprint space. But anyway, let me not market those guys here. I have no problem, mentioning people who are contributing and doing really cool things within the design community. That is the whole point of Do Better UX. Is about sharing the best resources and really helping people learn UX design and getting into this career in the best way possible. So we're not selfish about our processes or sharing information. So yeah, so in the ideation space, you want to do some sort of problem, some brainstorming type of workshop. You could also do different ideation type of things. If you're working remotely, there are ways that you can collaborate with whiteboarding tools. You can check out our previous live streaming session that we did on Monday that talks about doing UX remotely. We do have, we talk about different tools and methods that you can use to do research and other, UX type of things. And you can, pick up some of the things that you can use for this ideation phase as well. So in the ideation phase, that is where you're really coming up with these solutions, and you are, sort of like aligning what you have defined in your hypothesis and, coming up with some sort of solutions that you are, that you can, quickly put together in a prototype, which brings us to the next step of the process, of the design thinking process, right? Which is the prototype space. So here, what I always like to tell people, this is the only time in life where fake it till you make it actually applies. And I say that because your prototype is just, it's something that you want to do quickly and not overinvest your time. You're not trying to engineer something. You're just trying to make something that represents what your solution is, so that you can put it in the hands of customers, the people that you have defined in the empathize phase, your potential customers, your audience, your target audience, right? Here you want to, smoke mirrors, fake it till you make it. If you're doing a digital version, there are many tools that you can use for prototyping. I personally recommend, checking out Figma if you're not using it already. So Figma is a tool, is a free, almost free. Of course, there's paid versions of Figma, but it's an almost free online tool that you can use on any browser, and you can, just jump into it. It's great for collaborating. Again, also mentioned it in the live design streaming session that we had on Monday. So be sure to check that out if you're interested in knowing more about doing UX remotely. Cool. So your prototype, if you're coming from the UX design space, you probably have some ideas around prototyping and the tools that you want to use. And if you're not working on a digital product, right, you don't necessarily need to build the full version of the physical product that you have. You might want to mock up this with some paper some cardboard prototypes, or some paper prototypes, or maybe even something that is not an actual thing that people can use, but represent how you could propose that thing to them. So maybe it could be a brochure of that specific product, positioning it on maybe how it works or how it might work to the potential customer that you are giving it to them. It might be a voice prototype, where you have your application that does certain things, and you have a person in the background who is actually doing the responses of the voice prompts, or you have them pre-recorded or whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be AI powered or whatever it is. It could be just human powered for the sake of the prototype, and being able to test it with actual users, real human beings, for you to get the earliest feedback possible of your ideas and see if your hypothesis is working or not, right? So that is the prototype. I could go more and more into the prototype space, especially actually each one of these we could actually do different streaming sessions, just to cover each one of them, in depth. But do let me know again if you're watching this after the fact or you're watching this live. Let's see if we have some people rocking live right now. There we go. All right, so we have a couple of people currently watching live. If you are interested in any one of these topics, if you're watching this on the replay and you're interested in one of us taking a deep dive in any one of these topics, how do you do UX prototyping, how do you do user testing, how do you an in-depth of ideation, and some of the different workshops that you can run if you want to do ideation. How does the define phase work, how does the empathize work? Please do let me know. I will explain why I will not be going into quick depth in this what is design thinking video here, purely because I think I want to explain more of what the process is, and in each part of these steps, different companies do different things. People have got different approaches that they have towards how they do these different things. So I have some tried and tested methods that I've used over the years, that I use on each one of these steps, but it's not the same for everybody. Everybody you speak to will have a different set of things that they use to empathize, to define things, to ideate, to prototype. So what I'm even telling you right now, as to some of the things that you can do in these steps, the core steps remain the same, sort of like the core idea of, empathizing with the person, defining the problems, ideating and coming up with solutions. The prototyping and the testing sort of like stay the same, but what people put in these buckets might be different from company to company. That is what I've experienced. That is what I've seen from team to team that I've worked with over the years. Cool. So prototyping, fake it till you make it, smokes and mirrors, have human intervention in there, have all of the different things that you might need to help you articulate the best way possible to your potential users and the people that you'll be testing this thing with. Moving on to the last step. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth step of the design thinking process is the testing process, right? Now in this process, we are actually not testing the users. Some people call it usability testing, user testing, and all of that stuff. And people get confused with, what that might mean exactly. We are actually testing the product itself, or the prototype rather in this case. And, getting into, testing this, I think the best way to do it is to do it in person with actual people. Maybe not in person, in this time of COVID. You might want to do it over a call online or whatever it is. But the basic core concept of the testing phase is to get your product, or your prototype rather, tested by real people, so that they give you real feedback on what's working on it, what's not working, what is confusing, what did they like the most, what didn't they like about it, what can be improved, and all of that good stuff. And again, from the live design streaming session that we did on Monday, we mentioned some things around what is it that you want to do and unpack within this testing period. And we covered some of the things that you might want to to sort of like look into. I'll cover quite a little bit of things here, but in that video that we did on Monday, we went into some of the tools that you might use. So we mentioned things like look back, sort of like how would you do it in a DIY way of you interacting with your users to do an online or remote type of usability test. So here is where you really want to gather insights around if your product is working or not, or rather if your idea is working or not. The beautiful part about doing tests is that you don't need 100 people. I was sharing this with people on the live design streaming session on Monday again. That by the time you get to the fifth, sixth person of your interview, you have about 70 to 90% of what the problems of your product is, or you actually can get to a point where to try and figure out whether your hypothesis is working or not, because that's about all you need for people to tell you to validate an idea. Obviously you want to be able to use that for idea validation and just making sure checking the pulse if you're on the right pace or not. And you want to do more of qualitative research, whether the thing is actually working, if there's bugs or other things that you can improve, once you have the actual MVP out into the market. But you need basically 5 people for you to do your usability testing and validating your ideas. You don't need more people than that. By the time you get to the 5th person, you have about 70 to 80% of the problems that your product currently has. So bear that in mind when you are trying to recruit people to do user testing and trying to think of how many people do you need to validate ideas. Remember, this is just to validate ideas. So what happens is that this music is going crazy now. I wonder if it's that loud. It doesn't look like it's super loud on let me take it down a little bit. Okay, it doesn't look like it's super loud. It's just crazy. It's like crazy techno EDM. Maybe let me cool it down a bit. Yeah, let's cool it down a bit. Harris, really like your music, but yeah, it's going a little bit crazy now. All right, play that one. It's called Chimes. I thought it would be nice and cool and sweet, which it is. That's better. All right, cool. So back at it. You want to test your prototype with actual real people. So potentially the people that you might have interviewed, or the same group of people that you might have personified from your empathize and your define phase. This whole process is guided by the human interaction that you actually have with people on the empathize and define phase, which I think they're the most important and differentiators of the design thinking process from all the other creative problem solving processes that you might have out there and that you might be using over the years. So if you're getting into UX design, this is a very valuable and very effective way to approach creative problem solving for your clients. By understanding the user, you're really able to unpack what is it that the user is having a problem in, and then it's your job as a UX designer when you get to the ideation and prototyping part to try and match what the company what the solution is, and what is it that you have unpacked within that empathize phase of the design thinking process. So that is the process end to end. But what happens after you test, right? So what happens after you test is that depending on what your results are, right, you might want to go back into define mode, or you might figure out that maybe you might have totally missed the mark and you want to talk with a little bit more people to unpack. But what usually happens is that once you go through the first loop of this process, people go back into the ideate process, with the findings that they got from the testing, go into the prototype and do another test. And it's an iterative process that people use, to problem solve and improve products, whether digital, physical, or even processes in companies and other things like that. So that is, the process and what design thinking is made up of, right? Let's talk about some of the things that you might want to think about and need, to consider. But before we go into that, if you are enjoying this content and you would like to find out more, we do have a weekly newsletter that we do over at dobetterux.com. Again, the link is in the description below. Check us out. We've got a podcast called Not a UX Designer that talks about, building better products. We interview industry leaders around, some of the incredible things that they're doing out within the UX design space, within the design sprint space, check us out. Tongue twisted. Check us out at dobetterux.com and see our blog and some of the other content that we put out on a weekly basis. Cool. So having said that, let's go back to our topic. So some things to think about, before you start using, or if you're already using design thinking as a methodology, or as a core part of your problem solving or your offering, or you are getting into UX design and you are thinking like, okay, cool, what are some of the things that I need to think about here? Is that the same thing that I mentioned earlier on, is that design thinking is not a step-by-step process, right? In these different buckets that we went through today, the empathize, the define, and ideate, and prototype, and test, different companies do different things in here. So one thing is, you might want to find different sets of tools and methodologies that work in each of these buckets, that work best for you, where there's something that you might have been practicing over the years, that you've been doing. Maybe it's a specific brainstorming workshop that you've mastered over the years. Maybe it's adopting the LDJ to help you ideate and come up with solutions and prioritize things and next steps faster. Whether it's some of the other things that are out there that you might want to put into these things, there is no defined set of steps into how you empathize, how you do the define stage. It's more of an umbrella philosophy methodology that people use to just use it as a guideline to have human-centered design approach. So there is a little bit of overlap between design thinking and human-centered design, and I think we can save that conversation for another live design streaming session. I think it will be an awesome topic to talk about. If you think that would be an awesome topic to talk about, do comment in the description, comment in the comment section below with design thinking versus human-centered design, and let us know, and we can put out that content for you. It's something that I think it's a very interesting topic, and just to see what are the similarities and the differentiators within the two processes, which are very, very, very close to each other. Cool. So that is the first thing that you need to think about. And unlike other processes and recipes like design sprints, design thinking is a very loosely open umbrella term and philosophy that people use. If you want to learn more about design sprints, again, check out our podcast, Not a UX Designer. We have a couple of episodes there where we talk about what is a design sprint, why should you be running a design sprint, and I think it's a very valuable tool for UX designers to have in their toolkit in 2020 and beyond, because it is a recipe that is clearly defined step by step, as to how do you come up, how do you unpack things and come, from idea to an actual validated prototype within 3 to 5 days, depending on the flavor of the design sprint that you decide to take and do. It's really one of those processes that I think are super valuable for UX designers to learn in 2020. So I think those are some of the things that you need to think about and consider, as to how really are you going to engage with this process, how are you going to apply it, and how are you going to help level up your skills and your offering, and actually serve with more value to the people that you serve with the work with the great work that you do. So having said that, thank you for joining us today for the live design streaming session. Now, if you like the session, please do consider joining us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday live here on YouTube. We try to do this every weekday, and it was a disaster, but I think we're getting a rhythm now of doing it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So subscribe, hit the bell, so that you can get notified when we do go live or when we have an event that is coming up, just as a reminder, so that you don't forget and you miss maybe some of the really, really cool topics that we'll be talking about in the future here on the live design streaming sessions. Do check out dobetterux.com where you can sign up for a weekly newsletter with great UX career insights that you can literally apply immediately, whether you are somebody who's trying to get into UX design or somebody who is trying to take their career to the next level. We send out resources around some of the things that we'll be talking about throughout the week, as we do the live design streaming sessions, as we do our podcast, and some of our content on the blog as well. So yeah, check us out at dobetterux.com, and you can check out our podcast and our blog packed with more content for you to take your UX design career to the next level. So that's it from me today. Looking forward to seeing you guys on Friday, and I'm not quite sure what is the next topic that we want to be talking about next, but I think we are going to be diving into UX design versus UI design. Let us know if it is something that you want to jump into. I think it's a great topic to talk about. So yeah, I think that is what we're going to do on Friday. Let's talk about UX design versus UI design. What is the differentiators, and etc, etc, etc. Until then, I'm your host, Farah Henry. I'm out.